Now, there have been quite a few attempts to bring science and Genesis 1 together. Traditionally, there have been about 4 different views of how to interpret Genesis 1. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail concerning these views. Perhaps I can do that later on in a much longer video, thinking through all of these views. But for now, let me just kind of briefly share them with you. The first view is called the literal 24-hour day view. That is, that the days of Genesis are literal 24-hour days. So generally speaking, those who hold to this view also hold to a young Earth, that the Earth is somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,000 to 10,000 years old. But many scientists will argue that according to the latest findings of astronomy, the universe is around 13 billion years old. Not only that, but when scientists look at the fossil record, it doesn't appear that God made the world only 10,000 years ago. I mean, if he did, he made it to appear much older than it actually is. But many young Earth creationists, they push back and they say, well, yes, but creation builds in age. For example, if God created a mountain in one day and he presented it to a geologist, well, the geologist would likely say that it has been there for millions of years. Creation builds in age. I mean, how old was Adam when he was created? We don't believe he was a baby. We think he was about 25 or 30. If you were to cut down the tree of life in the garden, would you find rings if it was a literal tree? Some young Earth creationists still feel that science hasn't taken seriously the idea of catastrophe. They point to the catastrophe of the flood, and they suggest that during this event that great changes took place in the world topography-wise and geologically within a short period of time. So the Earth appears to be millions of years old when in fact it really is not. But once again, this view is called the literal 24-hour day view. This is the view that God created the earth in 6 literal 24-hour days. Now, many people who hold one of the next 3 views that I'm going to mention, they adopt a position called theistic evolution. That is, they believe that evolution is the mechanism that God used to create the world. So they would say that it is God who has provided that creative energy that drives evolution. So the first of these 3 views is called the gap theory. Now, this view came about because Christians were really attempting to take in all the findings of science, specifically that the earth appears to be millions, if not billions of years old. So under this view, there's an indeterminate gap between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. So Genesis 1:1 describes God's original perfect universe, which could have been created billions of years ago. And during this gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, they suggest that there was likely the fall of Satan that created catastrophe in the universe. And therefore, Genesis 1:2 describes a recreation, if you like, in 6 literal days, somewhere around 10,000 years ago. So this view doesn't throw out all of the scientific evidence, and yet it still maintains a literal 24-hour, 6-day creation week. Now, I don't have time in this video to critique this view, but the gap theory, in my opinion, is the least convincing to me. The next view is called the day-age view. In this view, the days of Genesis are not 24-hour days, but 6 sequential ages. So the day-age view uses the argument that the Hebrew word translated day can be used for a literal 24-hour period, but it can also be used to speak about a long period of time. So this view allows for vast ages, millions, billions of years even. The last option is called the literary framework view. Now, under this view, the divine works of creation are narrated in a topical order rather than a sequential order. So you're not meant to ask the question, why was the sun created on the 4th day when he created light on the 1st day? I mean, how does that make any sense? You don't ask those kinds of questions because this is the way that many of the creation narratives in the ancient Near East were written, very poetically. There was a purpose to how they wrote it. So this view takes ancient context into consideration. This book doesn't teach science, it teaches theology. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, I've heard all the views. What do you believe? Well, before I tell you, if you've been helped by this video, please go ahead and hit the like button. Just smash the thing, because that will be a blessing, because it will go out to more and more people that can be helped by this video. Now, what do I believe? Honestly, I don't know. But let me give you 3 thoughts. Firstly, I think that we should work hard to harmonize science with the Bible. That being said, I'm not a scientist. I do find science to be interesting, but I also find that I'm out of my lane. To be honest, there are categories and terminology in the realm of scientific thought that I simply just don't understand. I don't consult the appropriate literature well enough. Secondly, even if you conclude that the universe is somewhere around 15 billion years old, and you point back to the Big Bang as the thing that developed our universe, even if you believe that, sooner or later you are forced to ask the question, well, yes, but where did that highly condensed material come from that made the Big Bang happen? Now, if you want to believe that evolution is the mechanism by which God has created, I'm not going to throw stones. That's fine. I'm not going to throw stones. That's a good viewpoint. But what is not acceptable in my view, if you're a professing Christian, is what atheistic scientists believe. That there is no creator and that the world came about by chance. Thirdly, what do I believe about the literary genre of Genesis? Because that is extremely important for our conclusions. If you've not checked out my video on why the creation story is so hotly debated, I encourage you to check that out. I'll leave a link up above here for you to watch that video. It's an important video because it deals with the question of genre in Genesis. So it seems to me that the book of Genesis in the first chapters is some kind of mixed genre. Some of these first chapters, you see that there's symbolism here. Some of it needs to be taken literally. It is history. Some of it is very poetic. But for me to tell you what all these verses mean is impossible given our time constraint. More importantly, though, I think no matter what view you hold, in Genesis 1, we have a fantastic introduction of who God is. You see that Genesis wants to take you beyond arguing for a God and introducing God to us. There are too many people that are content with the vague idea that there is someone out there that must have made all of this. They're fine with stopping at that realization that there is some kind of creator. But Genesis wants to take us further than simply the evidence for God and introduce us to the kind of God that we have. I've heard it said that even though detectives are interested in fingerprints, for working out who has committed some kind of crime, they're far more interested in learning about the criminals themselves and building up a profile on them. You see, the fingerprints are just the pointers. And in a similar way, Genesis is not interested in God's fingerprints on the universe as it is to who God is. Well, I want to thank you for joining me, and hope that you've been blessed by the video. So God bless you in the way.